described as good ground in Australia. So earlier on, I talked about the range of readings that we get in the UK. And just as a reminder, I said somewhere about 4.5, maybe up to 9.5. If it was 4.5 in some of the tracks we record data on in Queensland, I can tell you that they would have packed up and gone home a long time ago. So out there in Australia, generally, most of the tracks won't race below 6.5. But going up the other end of the scale, we have tracks who regularly record average readings of 11.5 or 12, and they will, race on that ground. It is described as firm, or that they call it something like a good 2, would you believe? But they race on a firmer surface. In Australia, it's a combination of climate and soil type, generally. But yeah, we've got this amazing data set now from around the world where we're able to now, we're just now embarking on a research and development project where we're going to do some quite in-depth analysis of all those different data sets and what ground is called, with the object of perhaps coming up with a new way of describing ground across the globe. Okay.
Now, Mike, we always ask our guests for 3 things that they would change to improve racing. What are your 3?
A couple of the things I'm going to comment on are sort of popular debates. So my personal view is that we would be better with a few less fixtures, but with more emphasis, on quality, but also just adding more entertainment on more race days, so that the sport can continue to attract new race goers from a much wider range of backgrounds and to what are actual events, and sort of families and children and everything like that. It's a great sport, and just I think we can be better at getting more people to what are events if we make more of a few less race days, I would say. I'd just like to see all parts of the industry work together better on all subjects. There seems to be, rather than sometimes in the racing post, for example, it can appear that people are arguing or different sides are arguing over things. I think we can all come together to work on things. An example for me would be a better funding model for the sport to ensure that there's more of a fair return to the horsemen and racecourses at all levels. Investment in racecourse facilities and obviously prize money. Having been to Australia many times and seen prize money on offer there for just midweek, provincial country fixtures, as they call them, it's a world away from what we can offer here. And I think we've got a lot to learn from that type of more focused on what they call, the tab betting model. But certainly that the bet, when people have a bet, that more of that money comes back into the sport. That's one of the things I'd like to see. And the last one, probably won't be surprised about, I'd like to see a set of standard worldwide procedures to assess racing surfaces with data, same wording used everywhere to describe that surface, or indeed the same numbers used everywhere to describe that surface. I would say that, wouldn't I? But I don't think it's just about Turftrax and our products. I see this as one part of a sort of a jigsaw, if you like, of turning our sport into a global product where the same rules and standards apply everywhere, so that everyone can have confidence in, this great product, whether they're watching a race from Fairyhouse or Flemington. And as part of that, I think the form of every horse should be accompanied by some form of indexed going measurement eventually, not the word good or good to soft or yielding.
Fascinating stuff, Mike. Thanks so much for your time. I know you're a busy man, but you really explained the going stick, certainly to me, and I'm sure to Phil and our listeners, given us a much greater understanding from an expert insider's view. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for inviting me on, and have a great weekend, guys.
Well, Phil, I certainly know more about the going stick than I did before this podcast. How about you?
Yes, yeah, I knew when I chatted to Mike at the Horse Racing Writers and Photographers Awards last year that he could provide an insight that I thought would be interesting to our listeners. And yeah, speaking of that, if you did find this episode interesting, please tell your friends about us. We grow the podcast thanks to referrals and reviews, and the best way to support us is to follow or subscribe to us on your podcast platform of choice and help us to spread the word to some new listeners.
Well, that just leaves me to thank co-host Phil Boyle from BG Racing, our special guest Mike Maher from Turftrax, producer Callum Ronan from Callum Ronan Creative, and you, the listeners. As the flat season really hits top gear, will the Godolphin bandwagon roll on to Epsom, or will Sir Michael Stout win his 6th derby with Desert Crown? This is Simon Double from Solaria Racing saying goodbye.